Jade Blair here, your kind of worker online and in person, and today is an amazing day. The date this was filmed is the 1st of August 2024, the day that Queensland, Australia decriminalised hooking. Yay us whores, we changed the law and the lives of all Queenslanders going forward. But I hear you say, wasn't sex work already legal? You've been doing it for years? Yeah, you're right. So what has changed? A lot. So what decriminalisation basically does is remove all of the criminal provisions surrounding sex work. Let's talk about brothels first. So previously, if you wanted to run a brothel, which basically means more than one person providing sex work at a location, so even two sex workers working together would be considered a brothel, you had to apply for a license with the PLA, the Prostitution Licensing Authority. This was a sector of the government, but for some reason it was exclusively run by about 20 cops. They weren't administration officials, they weren't ministers, they were literal police. And it was their job to decide what was and wasn't appropriate for brothels. First off, to apply to get a brothel license, you had to pay a ridiculous sum of money. Now, the amount changed year to year, but it was upwards of $50,000. On top of this, whenever you were open for business, you must have a licensed manager on the premises. These licenses, again, which you had to get from the PLA, cost about $20,000 per person. You would need 3 to 4 managers, meaning 3 to 4 lots of licenses. And the real kicker is you were not allowed to pay for these licenses with loaned money. You could not get a bank loan or any type of credit to pay for these. You had to have cold, hard cash. So you can see that this is already incredibly prohibitive, and it means that the only people who could run a brothel were those who were already incredibly wealthy and had hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash just lying around. Which is really quite upsetting, because if you're a sex worker working in one of these brothels and you were mistreated by a manager and wanted to go work with your friends somewhere else and start up your own brothel, you really couldn't do it. It was not open to the working class. You had to be rich to be able to do this. Second of all, to own or be a manager at a brothel, you are not allowed to have any criminal record. You must be an Australian citizen, and you're not allowed to own more than one brothel within the state of Queensland. You then have to comply with all of the licensing requirements, including having a location for the sex workers to work at. So in Queensland, Australia, this meant an industrial area. And I have no idea who thought it was a really great idea to get a bunch of usually young, usually conventionally attractive, usually ladies, working usually late at night in a very secluded, discreet area. It was incredibly terrifying coming and going from my workplace because it was very discreet. There was no one around. There was no cameras. Getting police help would be quite hard because you're incredibly far away from society as a whole. It just made it a bit of a breeding ground for getting assaulted on your way to your car. And not only that, it meant that business was actually quite hard. You were far away from all of your customers, where they lived and also where they went for fun. We weren't allowed to operate in the city or near any retail shops, which really reduced our business. And this is a problem which I'm going to talk about later. Number 2, anyone could refuse your application to put a brothel there. Literally anyone. Members of the public, schools, churches, the council. If anyone said, I don't want a brothel there, congratulations, they won. You couldn't put a brothel there. So it was incredibly difficult to find a location to actually house these brothels. And it resulted in about only 22 brothels popping up in and around Queensland. And then on top of this, you had really big restrictions on what the brothel could actually look like. You had to have security cameras basically everywhere. All of the doors had to be remote controlled and lockable both from the inside and the outside, so you could lock people in and out. Every room had to have a panic button. And overall, none of this really helped us. None of the workers said that this is what they wanted to keep us safe. This was just something the government decided that they wanted to do. But it added another really big, significant cost to running these brothels, which is a problem. And on top of this, you had to allow the PLA to come through and watch everything all the time, which meant that you had a bunch of, let's be honest, male cops watching a whole bunch of ladies getting dressed and walking around in their lingerie. And most of us workers had no idea that the brothel was required to give up this footage for no reason. They didn't require a warrant. They could literally just walk in and request to see the premises in person, including the ladies in their dressing rooms, or request the footage at any time for any reason, which is just icky. You also were only allowed to have 5 rooms that you could have clients get their services in. So even if you could afford more rooms and you had more clients at one time wanting services, too bad, you were only allowed to have 5, which meant you could only service 5 clients at a time. On top of this, you were only allowed to have 8 ladies on shift. You're not allowed to serve alcohol or food, and you're not allowed to serve any type of alcohol or even have it on premises. Even if someone had it in the trunk of their car and wasn't drinking it, it would be a criminal offense for both the person who brought it on premises, but the management and owner as well, even if they didn't know it was there. Same goes for any illicit drugs. So what's the problem with this? Well, it meant that it was basically impossible to run these businesses. It was incredibly expensive to run with all of these requirements, and it meant that capacity to see clients was greatly reduced as well. So out of the 22 brothels that originally started in Queensland, we were left with just 16 for the entire state. And this was a big problem for the workers. Because to be honest, I don't really care about the owners. They're multi-millionaires already before they got these brothels, so cry me a river. I don't care if they lose a bit of money, but for the workers, it was really serious. It meant that there were very few operational and viable brothels that we could actually get work at. You know, the thing we need to do to pay our rent and feed ourselves and our families. So there were far more workers than there were available brothels. This, combined with the fact that the brothels could only have a maximum of 8 workers on shift at a time, meant it was incredibly competitive to actually get a spot working at one of these establishments. Which meant that the brothels could literally do whatever they wanted and get away with it. Workers absolutely had a lot of rights to refuse clients, to take breaks, and they weren't supposed to ever have any pushback from the brothel managers to do this. But in reality, we were often told if we didn't see clients that our shifts would be cut. We couldn't really do anything about it. If we tattled on them, well, we'd have to go to the cops, which already a lot of us just didn't want to do. There was no administrative body that we could go to seek help from. It was just the police. And historically, sex workers and police, even when working legally, have never had a good relationship. A lot of the cops just didn't care and didn't really see us as people worth needing protection. So that was a massive barrier. But number 2, if you complained, well, you can say goodbye to your job. And because there's only 16 workplaces within the entire of Queensland, good luck finding somewhere else. Pretty much all of them are just in Brisbane and Gold Coast, the most populated areas of Queensland. So if you lived somewhere that was large, but not city large, you're out of luck. You're going to have to travel at least an hour to 2 hours each way to get work. And on top of this, all of the brothel owners know each other. They actually have a collective, a union just for brothel owners. So if you annoyed one of them, they would give your legal details to every other brothel owner in the state. You would never work again. And if you decided that you did want to go to the police about your mistreatment and your harassment, well, the penalties were really, really big. They'd basically fine the ever-living daylights out of the brothels or shut them down. And I know it sounds kind of like a good thing. It means that there's a big threat and you think that therefore the brothels would act appropriately. But when these places shut down, the reality, it's not really the brothel owner that gets hurt. to them, it's just a little bit of extra side money. Remember, they're already incredibly rich people. It's the workers that get hurt. Not only would you be out of a workplace, but all your other friends and co-workers would as well. And they would struggle to find work within the remaining 15 brothels in the entire state. So going and getting help for poor treatment was really hard. So what changed? Well, all of that stuff no longer is a requirement. It means that brothels can work just like literally any other business. We can work from residential, industrial, or retail areas. We can employ as many sex workers as we like, and we can have as many rooms as we are able to pay for to service clients in, just like any other business like a massage shop. We're allowed to apply for a liquor license to serve alcohol, and we're allowed to make sure that our businesses are in safe areas and where we're going to get the most money. That means that there are now hundreds of legal brothels within the area. And don't get your panties in a twist. These brothels were already there. They were just illegal. There were hundreds of brothels, but only 16 of them in the state were licensed. So now all of these ladies who found workplaces that they liked and that they felt safe and comfortable at now don't have to fear police for just doing their job, because now it's legal. Celebrate and enjoy with me the fact that we got decriminalization. It is a massive success, and it really shows how powerful whores are when we band together. Till next time.